Hello Internet, and welcome to another episode of Experimental Cataclysm, the show where we talk about recent changes to the experimental version of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. And let's just jump into it this week. First up today from Carol1223, we have an update to the fish row that we talked about in the last episode. Apparently the 1-day rot timer was unintentional. As we discussed previously, this would probably have led to an overspawning of fish, and as such the spoilage is now set to 7 days. This will benefit you as the player. You will be able to keep these in your base longer, and it should prevent huge hordes of fish from appearing in ponds. It's a simple change, I just wanted to offer you an update. Next up is also sort of an update. It is a pretty big change to how nested recipes work, and this is from Bombastic Slacks. We talked previously about how when you select a recipe category with nested recipes, it would then move you to a new heading in the asterisk tab of the crafting menu. This is no longer the case. Recipes are now nested wherever they are listed. So now when you select a category, it will expand and display the contained recipes right there wherever you were looking. Now, although I was accepting of the old method of displaying nested recipes, I do think that this is pretty clearly the better choice here. Being able to expand and collapse recipes directly in the list rather than pulling you away to a new tab is objectively a positive change. I'm sure it isn't fun to put in a bunch of work on a new system and then decide later to scrap it all and redesign, but I do ultimately think this is better. And I guess I'll mention as well that although many recipes are still not nested, these categories are continuing to expand. As we discussed previously, it's kind of a lot of grunt work to organize like hundreds of recipes that we have, so it's going to take some time and volunteers to get things sorted. If you're interested, it does seem like something that is probably pretty simple to do. It's just tedious and takes some time, so if you're interested, you can hit up the GitHub or the developer Discord. I'm sure they would like some help. Moving on though, next up today from A Chansey, we've got the addition of freezer spawns. A while back we got freezer appliances and furnitures, but they didn't actually spawn in very many locations. Freezers have generally been underrepresented in this game really for a long time. Most places would have fridges where you would expect to see freezers, like in grocery stores, places like that. The appliance system though in general has changed how we interact with these type of items. It used to be that you would have to disassemble them and then build your own mini freezer or mini fridge or whatever completely from scratch, and now of course we just disconnect them in their regular form, and then we use that with the power grid and appliance system. No crafting is necessary. But anyway, this PR adds these freezers to more locations, including the butcher shops, LMOE shelters, hunting lodges, furniture stores, home improvement superstores, a few basements, and a house garage. It is a big list, and although some of them are kind of uncommon, like how often do you see a home improvement superstore, it's still nice to see that these things will be easier to find from now on. Next up today from MNG Cataclysm, we've got the addition of a zombie llama. Mostly just mentioning this for the lulz, but these creatures do actually also have some acid related things we should talk about. They have an acid spit ability, and unfortunately this attack uses the same gun style acid attack as the corrosive zombie, and like many other creatures that use ranged attacks, this zombie llama seems like 1,000,000% too accurate. In my testing, it was hitting me essentially with every single shot. It is a low damage attack. Like the corrosive zombie, it only deals 4 damage per hit. It seems like a fixed value, but that can be mitigated through armor. However, this attack also occurs every 2 to 3 turns, which is very fast. It also has a range of 10 tiles, so between all of those factors, the super accuracy, the frequency of the attack, and the range, this is going to be very annoying. It also does have the acid barf ability like the acidic zombie and the wretched puker. This is a very powerful attack that deals acid damage directly to you as the player, and it drops an acid tile at your feet. The way the game works, that means that you're going to spend at least 1 turn where you're standing in acid, which is of course going to damage your legs and or feet depending on the situation. It can also cause a corrosive damage over time effect as well. So like most acid creatures, this has the potential to be very difficult for you. I personally think the acid attacks in general in the game are too OP and should probably be nerfed, although that is not the fault of the creator of this PR. I think that the spit ability on this llama is too frequent, but the damage is low enough that it probably will not be a huge problem, especially especially if you have any kind of torso armor. Additionally, these creatures do not appear to spawn anywhere in the game. They are only the result of a llama being zombified. So if you're diligent about pulping and you're paying attention, it is possible that you will never even encounter this creature. Oh, and finally, the creature is named the vicious, I'm probably going to say this wrong, vicuña, and this word I can't say. It's apparently an ancestor of the modern llama that you probably picture in your head. Now, I'm really not a fan of this name. I think that it's entirely too long, and that 99% of people do not connect the word vicuna or vicuña to llama. In the description, they are referred to as a llama, and in the PR, they were initially named the Z llama, which I'm assuming is llama. I'm not a fan of that either, just slapping a Z in front of a creature's name. I hate, frankly, when people do that. In my opinion, they should have just been called the zombie llama. All this other stuff just seems confusing, and most people are not going to understand it at a glance. Anyway, that's my take. I didn't really realize I had so many thoughts on this enemy, but apparently I do, so sorry if that was overly critical. Next up today, we've got two new professions, both of which are retired soldiers. The first is from Nihad 2004 and is called the military veteran. The idea here is that you would have the military-esque skills and whatnot associated with a soldier, but you would not actually start with a firearm or military gear. And then the second profession is from Garnet GW and it's called Old Veteran. This was made specifically for the Golden Years scenario that we discussed previously. Someone had talked on Discord about wanting a Vietnam vet to roleplay as in the Golden Years scenario, and then they made one themselves. Now, I don't believe that this was that same person, but it is possible that they took inspiration from that. Seems a bit, coincidental that they would happen around the same time. But anyway, they start with a cane, but are wearing some basic military gear, and they have an M1A, and etc, etc. I find it a bit strange that someone spawning in a retirement community would have a, or I guess it's not I was going to say assault rifle, but I guess it's not. I think it's just a semi-automatic, like M14 predecessor. But anyway, it feels like something the staff might have noticed when they did the check-in and probably would not allow you to keep a live military service weapon in that area. And the implication there is that it was their service weapon, which also raises the question of, were they permitted to keep their service weapon after they left the service and blah blah, etc. Now, regardless though, I guess I don't know a lot of that type of information, but I did think that these two professions were interesting, as they're from two different people, but they both added military veterans around the same time. So I figured I would mention it. I think they're kind of neat. Next up today, well, as you all probably know, Halloween is coming. As such, candy is on the store shelves, and we here in the Unicorn household are preparing for our annual ritual sacrifice. But really, the holiday is about candy, let's be honest. So Do It All or Not 123 has now added candy bracelets to the game. These are, of course, the pinnacle of all candies because it's both sugary and fashionable. These bracelets can be worn by the player and they can also be consumed. Now, these contain 85 calories, but more importantly, it will remind you of your childhood, and nostalgia is priceless. Additionally, when you consume this item, you do not get a string in return, so you have officially consumed the string, which surely will not have any negative effects on your digestion. Anyway, my many bad jokes aside, I just wanted to mention this because it's simple and it's fun. I don't know. Next up today, actually, surprise, I bet you'll be annoyed by me popping in here to tell you that I recently released a video for Telltale's The Walking Dead. I recently played through Season 1 and I decided to make a video about it. It is highly edited and we talk about the formation of the company, some of their early games, the Walking Dead franchise as a whole, and then of course I give a pseudo review of the game. Now, I really enjoyed making that video and I think it is objectively one of the better things I've ever created on this channel. However, angry commenters go burr, by the way. 100% someone entitled will tell me I should just shut up and make Cataclysm content. For everyone else, though, I love you. Thank you for listening to my brief interruption, and there will be a link to that video in the description down below. Back to Cataclysm though, next up we've got a change that I suspect is going to have a pretty mixed response. This is from Vanera and it removes the Gamma Globulin shot from the game. Now, if you're not familiar, this shot has been in the game basically forever and it provided an insane boost to your health stat. This is a leftover from the days back in the day you could just use a med kit or whatever and it would instantly heal your character, and this is one of those type of items. We've been moving away from those sort of shenanigans for a while now, and the Globulin shot has been mentioned mentioned many times as something that does not make sense and is prime for removal. Well, now it has been officially removed from the game. Some of you will be mad about this, and I've already seen some negative takes. I don't know what to tell you. The shot did not make any sense, and it should not be permitted to continue existing. Especially with the reworks of the health system that we just had, it makes even less sense now, and it was overpowered in terms of the effect it had on the player. And to me, it makes perfect sense that this would be removed. Anyway though, one thing to note here is that it was not simply obsoleted. Usually when something is removed, that item continues to exist in the game so that it would not break a previous save. This time, however, the shot was migrated rather than obsoleted, and it was migrated specifically to a syringe. This means that when you update your game and you load up your save, you're going to find that your existing gamma globulin shots have now been replaced by empty syringes. I imagine this will be irritating for some people as well, but that is just how it is. I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this. To me, I had been expecting this to be removed for a really long time. Like literally for years, Kevin has said, like, hey, this doesn't make sense, I'm going to remove it eventually. I really only mentioned this at all is because I have already seen a negative reaction, and I expect there may continue to be kind of a negative reaction, and I just wanted you to know what was going on. Next up today from Aaron, we have more sheet metal armor stuff. These specifically are case hardened versions of the armors that we discussed in the previous episode. Now, if you don't know what case hardening is, well, neither did I really until I googled it. Basically, it's just you using heat to make the exterior metal of an object harder and more durable while keeping the inner layers softer. And the reason you keep the metal soft on the inside is so that the whole piece doesn't become too brittle and snap, which would happen if you hardened it all the way through. Anyway, the idea here is that you're taking those sheet metal armors that we discussed previously, and you're using your forge to heat treat the exterior. Now, in order to do this, you're going to require the initial piece of armor. Let's say you made sheet metal gauntlets. You're going to also need a book. Unlike the sheet metal armor recipes, these case hardened variants require a book recipe. Currently, these recipes are only found in the Studies in Historic Armor Smithing book, which is very limiting that you have to have that one specific book. A forge is also necessary since you're doing heating. I think theoretically you could do this with like a blowtorch, but I have no idea how practical that actually is. But anyway, since you need a forge, you're also going to need tongs, and you're going to need a hammer as well. Now, I'm not 100% on why you need the hammer. To my understanding, the case hardening is done after you've shaped the item, but I'm going to assume it's not actually for smithing. It's more just like fine adjustments and taps here and there. And then additionally, part of this process is adding more carbon to the steel, so you're going to need some extra charcoal as well. Now, these are still middle ground items. They do not provide the protection values of traditional plate armor, but it also doesn't require the same insane amount of work that you would find on traditional plate. As such, my opinion on these is the same as it was last week. I think these are really good, like middle ground metal armors. There's a clear progression now. You will make simple sheet armor, you will upgrade them to case hardened armor, and then eventually you will probably properly forge your own armor. But yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say about that, really. I was just pointing it out and giving you a rundown on how to do it. Next up today, we've got a new faction, and once again, I am scrapping what I originally had here. I went pretty deep into the criticism and issues that I see with this location, as well as some concerns that I have over, like, just the vibe of this place. Oh, that's vague as hell, I guess. Basically, I saw some issues here that I wanted to talk about, but some people on Discord pulled me back and told me that I was probably misreading things. So yes, we have a new faction. This was added by MNG Cataclysm, and it is Viking themed. They offer a variety of quests. For example, the intro quest is you killing a big old rat. There are also some later quests to kill a certain number of zombies. For example, I saw 1,000 listed in one of them. And I mean that most players that make it into summer or whatever, you probably do kill 1,000 zombies, but that's still a pretty lofty number if you're just playing casually. Additionally, most factions in this game have quests that will point you towards them. For example, if you come across Mr. Lappin, he will then point you towards the Isherwood family, if I remember correctly. However, I didn't see anything pointing to this new faction. It doesn't look like there are other NPCs that will direct you to this location. So it looks like you're going to have to stumble across this location organically, and the exterior is a big log-walled compound, so it's pretty easy to spot. Anyway, trying to avoid too many spoilers here, the group, as I said, is Viking themed. They care a lot about being really strong and blah blah, etc. Now, to be perfectly honest, I find a lot of this pretty cliche cliche, the whole strong dominating the weak, them co-opting a Norse symbol and religion and twisting it into their own pseudo-religion, etc., etc. I think the location is fine overall, but I do think they could use some work on the dialogue and overall theme of the faction. Additionally, they are extremely well stocked, which is much more so than most of the factions that you would come across in the game, and I find that a bit incongruous. But overall, it's not a bad faction. I know that a lot of times I sound really critical, and that's mostly because I am a very critical person, but I think this location is mostly fine. The person that created it has not had many PRs previously merged to the game, so for them to do this much work and dive into like complicated NPC dialogue trees and map gen, etc., I mean, I'm pretty impressed when a new person jumps into the harder parts of Jason, so yeah, that's worth recognizing. Anyway, that is probably a wrap for today's show. With what I cut out, I imagine this is going to be a pretty short episode. Apologies for that. Everyone, thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something about the game and whatever, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode, and I'll see you next time.